Okay, so we're going to look at a poem by Shelley entitled Ozmandias, and it is one of his more commonly known poems. Um, and the important theme of it is irony. Um, so we'll see how he lays out his argument with the form of a sonnet in the octave. He postulates what, a scene, and in the sestet of the sonnet, it is kind of a commentary on what we have just seen in the octave. All right, so that's basically the overall structure of the poem, and it is a narrative. Okay, so it begins. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and snare of cold command tells that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal, these words appear: My name is Ozmandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare. The lone and level sands stretch far away." So the beginning, we're told the story from someone else. Okay, so the speaker, poet, is telling us that someone told him a story, and antique meaning a land of antiquity, like the Holy Land, or Egypt. So some land far away doesn't identify it. It's not important. But there was a desert, and as far as the eye could see, one would meet nothing but a vastness, a barrenness, a lack of material things. However, he found the remains of what had been a colossal monument at one time, and it would be of a person who was boasting of his magnificence, of his power and might and importance to the world. And now all you have is a broken piece of that monument. It's shattered visage, we are told. All right, that would be, the face of the monument half sunk in the sand. And near them, like after the statue had fallen, there was a pedestal. And he goes over and he reads the pedestal, and that would be the content of the sestet of this poem. But in the octave, he focuses on the visage, the facial features of the statue and what they signify. And what we see is the statue is of a man of power, but not a very nice person. Someone who had a wrinkled lip and sneer. Okay, those words, sneer, of cold command. All right, so don't mess with me. That kind of attitude. He was an all-powerful figure that didn't have a warmth of heart for his subjects. All right, and the narrator tells us that the man who sculpted this statue knew well the quality of his subject. He well read those passions in the man, and that aspect of it survives. It's a concrete block, and there's nothing life about it. It's lifeless. Yet, what survives on it is the features telling a story stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. Okay, so the sculptor captured the significance of this man through his features. Okay, and what are they? A man of power who was ruthless, it sounds like. All right, so let's read the octave again. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert, and near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and snare of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive. Stamped on these lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed." So that's the impression in the octave. Now we know that in a sonnet, the second part, the sestet, remaining 6 lines, are either they change in some way. In this case, it's a commentary on the octave. It could be anything. It could be something different, but in this case, it's a commentary, and it's subtle. It is something that we have to infer. It's implied in these words. On the pedestal, we see this caption: "My name is Ozmandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair." Okay, so you know what he's suggesting here, that no one can touch his might, his power, and his importance. However, the last 3 lines, we are told nothing beside that remains. You look around 360 degrees, and what do you see? Round the decay of that wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch as far as the eye can see, far away. So the message is clear that, vanity, vanity, all is vanity. This man thought that no one would ever exceed him in power, might, or importance. And today we go back there, and there's just a fragment of a piece of stone telling us, yes, somebody like that existed at one time, but who cares? How important? Not important, right? So let's look at my little bit of a explanation. Vanity, vanity, all is vanity. This line from Ecclesiastic might be the theme of the poem. Shelley's device of having a stranger tell the story to the narrator lends an air of mystique to the narrative, very similar to that used in the rhyme of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge, where a stranger at the door of a wedding banquet tells his tale to a guest coming in. It lends an atmosphere of long ago and far away, mystique to it, all right? So it's an intrigue. The plot of the narrative is rather simple. A stranger traveled to an ancient land such as Egypt, where he discovered the broken remains of a statue lying somewhere in the middle of a desert. The pedestal of the statue identifies the figure as someone called Ozmandias. What remained of his features suggested that he was a tyrant who prided himself on his mighty kingdom, which he ruled over with cold command. And the irony, as I said at the opening here, lies in the fact that there is nothing there today to suggest that he ever lived except for the shattered remains of a time-worn statue. All else around the spot is desert sand. And we know what a sonnet is, but I'll review it. The sonnet is a poem of 14 lines whose structure generally determines the presentation of the content or the subject matter. First 8 lines, octave, present one view of the subject. Second 6, that should be, another. Sometimes the last 2 lines will sum up the theme or perhaps make a reference to it. There are other characteristics, such as the rhyming scheme, like ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE, or Shakespearean sonnet, AB, AB, CD, CD, EF, EF, and then a rhyming couplet, GG at the end. The letters standing for the the sound, the sound. In this sonnet, the narrator describes the features of the statue in the first 8. He tells us that although the statue has eroded with the passage of time, no one can still determine, or rather one can still determine, that it has depicted the features of a ruler who appeared to be a fierce tyrant. Besides describing the features of the man, he comments that the sculptor as well could read the emotions of his subject and recorded them for posterity. There is some irony in the fact that although the remains of the statue are lifeless hunks of mineral, there is still some passion or emotion that can be detected from the remains despite the long passage of time. In the sestet of the poem, the focus shifts to the inscription found on the pedestal and the surrounding setting. It is in this part of the poem that the irony is found. Anything that is written has an intended reading audience, even if that audience is the writer himself. The inscription on the remains of the pedestal was written for the intent of impressing its intended reader, whoever that might be, for the words instruct the reader to look around him and be overwhelmed by Ozmandias' majesty and power as evinced by the works in the form of temples, domes, towers, massive buildings, and walls. And anyone who might have thought of competing and matching such an architectural accomplishment would have to despair. But Shelley tells us that today nothing remains, not even a trace. The desert sands stretch into the horizon in every direction. Irony is an effective device for suggesting an idea without stating the idea in words. Perhaps Shelley had the theme from Matthew 23 in mind, where Christ tells the crowds, "Whoever exalts himself shall be humbled. Whoever humbles himself shall be exalted." Okay, so that's the theme of that. I'm not going to make any comments on the following 2 poems. I'll just read them through, and I'll leave them for you to see if you can see some relation with them and Ozmandias. The first is another by Shelley, and it's entitled "The Flower That Smiles Today." The flower that smiles today, tomorrow dies, and all that we wish to stay tempts and then flies. What is this world's delight? Lightning that mocks the night, brief even as bright. Virtue, how frail it is. Friendship, how rare. Love, how it sells poor bliss for proud despair. But we, though soon they fall, survive their joy and all, which ours we call. While skies are blue and bright, while flowers are gay, while eyes that change ere night make glad the day, whiles yet the calm hours creep, dream thou, and from thy sleep then wake to weep. Okay, I'm not going to make any comment. Let you think about it. Here's another one by Shelley again. These are 3 poems by Shelley. We are clouds that veil the midnight moon. How restlessly they speed and gleam and quiver, streaking the darkness radiantly. Yet soon night closes round, and they are lost forever. Or like forgotten lyres whose dissonant strings give various response to each varying blast, to whose frail frame no second motion brings one mood of modulation like the last. We rest. A dream has a power to poison sleep. We rise. One wandering thought pollutes the day. We feel, conceive, or reason, laugh or weep, embrace fond foe, or cast our cares away. It is the same, for be it joy or sorrow, the path of its departure still is free. Man's yesterday may ne'er be like his morrow, naught may endure but mutability.